So Anthony Scaramucci and Donald Trump have officially broken up. They're now sniping at each other. So naturally, the mooch has instantly become a media darling because he's voicing the most tepid criticism of Trump imaginable. I want to show you some of that criticism here, and then we're going to talk about it.
With this Axios interview, you compared the president to Chernobyl, something of a nuclear meltdown, and then you went on to say a couple more weeks like this, and country over party is going to require the Republicans to replace the top of the ticket in 2020. A couple more weeks like this, you say. A couple more weeks like what?
Well, the last time I was in this chair with you, John, we were talking about the racially charged rhetoric that led to a whole Twitter nonsense from the president, and obviously he then left to go to the two shooting areas. And so now he comes back from the two shooting areas. That was like a total catastrophe because the only thing he was doing in those areas was talking about himself and praising himself and crowd sizes. And so it just, one day after the next, it gets worse and worse and worse. And in the meantime, as you know, in a chair like this or inside your studio or elsewhere, you know, I got fired 2 years ago and have tried to stay very loyal to him and very loyal to the agenda because I think the policies are very, very good for the American people. But the rhetoric is so charged and so divisive that we have to all just take a step back now and say, what are we doing actually? So one thing that I find reprehensible, and the president continues to do this, and I think what will end up happening is sound and reasonably minded men and women in the Republican Party will say, wait a minute, we can't do this. He is giving people a license to hate, to provide a source of anger, to go after each other, and he does it on his Twitter account. So let's just stop for a second and think about this. We ignore it, but he goes after people personally. Going after me personally, no problem. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Donnie Deutsch can take it. But he goes after individuals as the president of the United States on his Twitter account, okay, which incites hate, which incites death threats. I mean, at some point, I think the people in my party will have to look at all this stuff and stop being anesthetized to it and say, hey, what are we doing? The policies are great, many of them. The trade war thing is likely going to end up in an unexpected outcome. We can talk about that if you want. But lastly, how are we all tolerating this? So to me, I'm just saying, last week, arguably one of the worst weeks in his presidency. And again, I'm not talking about things that happened to him politically from a legislation point of view or things like that, but just from the way he's acting as a human being. So to me, a couple more weeks like this, I really do believe there will be a groundswell in the party where people say, hey, the policies are great, but you're setting us up the way Jimmy Carter set up the Democratic Party, where they went into the wilderness for 40 years. So those are my opinions. I'm very proud to state them. And, listen, I mean, if you saw the Chernobyl series, it did not end well. So we're in the first 2 episodes now. Let's see how this thing unfolds.
Are you calling for a change at the top of the Republican ticket?
Well, I'm calling for it to be considered, yes. I think you have to consider a change at the top of the ticket.
Where do I begin with this? Okay. That's delusional. It's delusional. He said a couple more weeks of how Trump's acting, and there's going to be a groundswell in the party against him. Dude, the base loves him. He has like a 90% approval rating with his base. He has the highest approval rating with his base than any president ever. Now, don't get me wrong. That still only translates to about 43% was the most recent poll. 43% of the entire country supports him. But the idea that, like, there's going to be a revolt from within the Republican Party. No, they love this guy. He's ideal to them. And it's so funny. What a random thing to say. Like, oh, another couple weeks of this. Another couple weeks of this. You act like he was just elected, and people are just learning about how Trump is. They know how Trump is, and his base is not abandoning him. They love him. So what, like, a ridiculous argument to make. And then he said, well, how weak, how tepid this... I'm calling for this... Maybe we should kind of, a little bit, but not really, replace him at the top of the ticket? Should be considered something? These guys are so weak. That's so weak. Because I'm sure you caught it there, because he said it probably more than anything else he said there. He kept stressing, his policies are great, policies are great, his policies are great. That tells you everything about all these clowns. They're like, hey man, listen, you want to do a tax bill that totally screws over working people and raises taxes on people who make $70,000 a year or less over a 10-year period? You want to gut the estate tax? You want to cut the corporate tax rate? You want to cut the top marginal tax rate? You want to deregulate Wall Street? You want to wage more war and try to squeeze out the Venezuelan government and the Iranian government? You want to make terrible decision after terrible decision until the cows come home? I love all of that, but you're a little mean on Twitter. You talk about yourself a little too much when you went to the places where the shootings happen. By the way, now he's acting like, oh, this president has gone too far in many instances. He should be uniting the country. Just so you know, Anthony Scaramucci took the job that he only had for like 7.5 seconds in the Trump administration, well after Donald Trump had made the comments when he launched his campaign, oh, Mexico's not sending their finest, they're rapists, they're criminals. I assume some are good people, clearly implying most are rapists and criminals. It's kind of like the definition of bigotry. And then also the Muslim ban comment, Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims coming to this country. You took the job when he said that stuff. So now to act like, oh, good sir, I believe you've crossed the line. It's just so self-serving. And here's the reality, guys. Here's the reality. Scaramucci ran out of angles. He ran out of angles. So what's he going to do? Well, he hit the jackpot because he finally figured it out. He finally cracked the code. Dude, all you have to do to get corporate media to love you is to say, I agree with everything Trump is doing ever, but, oh my God, the mean tweets, and he's unpresidential, and he's not acting right from a human level. Oh my God. That's all you had to say, and the media all of a sudden is like, oh, Scaramucci, a very serious person. He's a very serious person. Their ideal people are like, hey man, I agree with Trump on everything, but I don't know. I don't like the way he's acting and his temperament, and he's being unpresidential, and that Twitter feed, and the selfishness and the narcissism. Because the surface level criticisms of Trump are the ones that they bask in all day, every day. That's what it is. So, and you see it. Now he's like, a media darling. He did an interview with all of them, and they're like, Trump said mean things to you. What do you say back? And he's like, well, I say I agree with him on everything, but I don't like him too much at this moment. Oh, very edgy. We like that, sir. Would you please take a 6-figure salary job from us? That's what's coming next, I guarantee you. This was his angle to get his name back in the media, to pretend like he's relevant, to hopefully open up some doors moving forward. Some sort of an analyst, some sort of a contributor. So that's what's going on here. And if you think that this is some sort of like sincere, principled, like, oh, he had an enlightenment moment. Man, I got a bridge to sell you in Florida, dog. Because hell no, that's not what's happening here. And the media is more than happy to play along with a character like Scaramucci. They love guys like this. A character who just like tepidly criticizes Trump while agreeing with him on everything. Who will give them some sound bites every now and then to pump out some articles that are just like silly and totally unnecessary. He is the exact kind of person that they want to like. And now they finally come to that point, and you're watching it unfold right in front of your face.